Dark, rainy night room lit only by a flickering desk lamp. Table cluttered with rejection letters, crumpled papers, and unpaid bills. A wall clock ticks loudly in the background. Aarav sits silently, staring at a letter stamped rejected. Some people fail once and give up forever. But what if someone fails 100 times and still refuses to stop? Aarav, posting applications, receiving envelopes backmarked failed. Crossing out plans in a notebook. For 10 long years, he tried. For 10 long years, he failed. Again and again. Aarav whispers to himself, maybe success isn't made for me. He drops his head into his hands. Soft piano plays. Lightning flashes through the window, briefly lighting up a photo of Aarav and his mother smiling. But every story of greatness begins in silence. In those lonely nights when no one is watching, Aarav looks at his reflection in a cracked mirror. Older face slowly morphs into his younger self. Transition to a bright village morning. Yanav runs down a dusty path with a worn-out school bag. Before the failures, before the pain, there was just a boy with a dream too big for the world around him. His mother calls from a roadside tea stall. Aarav, Jaldiya Haja, Madatkar. Aarav helps her serve tea with a smile. He was poor, yes, but his heart was rich with belief. Aarav pauses, looking up at the sky as an airplane flies overhead. He stretches his hand toward it as if trying to touch it. He didn't know it then, but his journey to 100 failures had just begun. In a small corner of India, a young boy dared to dream of a life far beyond his village. Aarav stops outside a shop, gazing at a poster of a pilot flying a plane. His eyes sparkle with imagination. While others saw the sky as the limit, he saw it as his destination. Aarav studying under a dim streetlight at night, while his mother sells tea nearby. His family had little no electricity, no luxury, only faith. Mother softly says, "Bata, toda, Aravi." Smiles bastoda. Oma, ekdin mein kushpan kadihauga. Every great dream begins with sleepless nights. Teacher asks a question. Aarav answers confidently. Classmates whisper and laugh. Yeto hamesha hero binta. Aarav ignores them, focused and determined. When the world mocks your vision, that's when your journey truly begins. The teacher smiles proudly at him. A rare encouragement in his young life. After school, Aarav runs to help his mother again at the tea stall. Customers talk about money, jobs, and city life. Aarav listens silently, his eyes filled with curiosity. He listened more than he spoke, collecting lessons from every word, every struggle. Aarav sits near the railway tracks, watching trains pass. He imagines himself traveling to big cities, studying, inventing something new. Dreamers often live two lives, one in reality, one in their mind. Mother sits beside him. Dentally sayin, zindagi. Asaan, nahi hoti Aarav. Aarav replies softly. Tomenas. Asan, bana. Danga. Asan bana donga. The world tells you what you can't do, but the brave write their own possibilities. Nightfall. Aarav walks home, glancing at glowing city lights far away. He didn't have much, no money, no guidance, but he had something greater, belief. And in that belief, a storm of courage was silently forming. His mother hands him a lunchbox wrapped in newspaper. She says lovingly, "Beda sa pen, badekla, par, perzaman, perakna." Aarav smiles and nods. He had dreams in his eyes and dust on his shoes, a boy ready to chase the impossible. Aarav in school, eagerly listening to a career counselor speaking about scholarships. Counselor says, if you score top marks, you can study in the city for free. Aarav's eyes widened with hope. He writes scholarship equals my chance on a torn page of his notebook. And in that single sentence, his purpose was born. Aarav studying late into the night under a kerosene lamp. Aarav writing formulas on walls, helping his mother in the morning, studying during tea breaks. His friends playing cricket outside while he continues reading. While others played, he prepared. While others slept, he believed. Exam day arrives. Aarav enters the examination hall nervously but determined, flipping pages, bidding pencil clock ticking fast. He poured his soul into every word, every answer. Cut to the result. Day students gathered around the notice board. Aarav pushes through the crowd, eyes scanning the list. His name is missing. Silence. Aarav stands still, tears forming but refusing to fall. Classmates whisper, Uska, Nam Hai Nahi. Aarav walks away slowly, the noise fading behind him. Reality-struck dreams don't always reward you the first time. Aarav sits under a tree near the school, clutching his result sheet. He crumples it, but then flattens it again. The symbolic gesture of not giving up. He didn't tear his dreams apart. He just decided to start again. His mother notices and says gently, Koi baat nahi, beta, har bar jeet zaruri nahi hoti. Aarav looks up and replies softly, Par har nabi, to mera, apsi nahi, ma. Failures can break you, or they can build you. Aarav pinning a new note on his wall. Try again. He starts studying once more under the same flickering lamp. Dreams test you, de jure, but only to see if you're strong enough to earn them. Dreams test you, de jure, but only to see if you're strong enough to earn them. Aarav, now grown older, carries a small bag and waves goodbye to his mother. Mother's eyes fill with tears. She says, Apna hayal rakhna. Beta. Aarav replies, Ma, Jab, Mine, Lotanga, Sapne sakar ke aunga. Every dreamer must leave home, once not to run away, but to rise. Aarav walks through the city streets, overwhelmed but hopeful. Aarav clutches his resume tightly. The city didn't know him, and didn't care to. Aarav, knocking on office doors. Rejection after rejection. We'll call you later. Sorry, no vacancy. Aarav's money running out. Eating one meal a day. Saving coins. Sometimes, dreams don't need enemies. Reality is enough to break them. Aarav sitting on a park bench, clutching his stomach from hunger. Nearby, a streetlight flickers. The only source of light in the dark. When no one believes in you, even silence becomes heavy. A stray dog walks up to him. Aarav shares his biscuit with it. His hands are covered in grease. He still studies technical books during breaks. Shop owner laughs. Engineer Banage. Aarav sleeping on the floor beside the machines. Rain leaking from the ceiling. His notebook open beside him with sketches of circuits and designs. He was building something greater, not just machines, but his willpower. Aarav writes a letter to his mother. Ma main thiek. Hoon, bas doda, waktor lajega. He lied, not out of pride, but to protect her hope. Aarav walks on a dimly lit road after work, drenched in rain. He stops, looks up at the tall city skyline glowing above him, his face wet from both rain and tears. When no one believes in you, you must become your own believer. Aarav clenches his fist, takes a deep breath, and keeps walking forward. Aarav sits on the edge of his bed, holding his last 20-rupee note. The table beside him has unpaid rent notice, torn notebook, a half-eaten piece of bread. Every fighter has a moment when the battle feels impossible to win. Aarav walks to his repair shop. The owner scolds him for being late. Aarav apologizes quietly, continues working. His hands tremble as he tightens a bolt, eyes empty from exhaustion. When the body gives up, the mind starts to follow. Aarav gets drenched while walking home, finds his room locked. Landlord shouting for rent. Aarav pleads, Basek hafta or DDG. Landlord replies coldly, Sapne se kiraya nahi chalta. Sometimes the world reminds you, dreams don't pay bills. Aarav, sitting on a bench near a bus stop at night, rain pouring, clothes soaked, suitcase beside him. He watches buses leaving one labeled village. And there it was, his escape, his surrender, his defeat. Aarav whispers to himself, Shiad Masaithi, Bad Sapen, Dek Nagalti Thi. He had lost everything. Not money, not opportunity, but faith. His mother smiling, the first time he saw a plane. His first exam failure. The note on his wall. Try again. Aarav throws his old notebook into a trash bin, starts to walk away, but a gust of wind blows the notebook open. Tepache, with dream projects scribbled on it, flutters in the rain. Even destiny wasn't ready to let him quit yet. He stops, turns back slowly, picks up the soaked notebook. His eyes stare at it for a long moment. Tired, broken, but not completely dead inside. Sometimes, rock bottom isn't the end. It's the beginning of clarity. Aarav sits under a streetlight, clutching the wet notebook, whispering, Busek. Busek. Or lightning flashes in the sky. Music shifts from sadness to a faint, hopeful note. When he thought it was over, Desnet whispered, Try one more time. Aarav sits on the same bench, eyes swollen from exhaustion, clutching his soaked notebook. A soft breeze turns the pages. He glances at one line written years ago. Never stop learning. When life takes everything from you, sometimes it returns a teacher. An elderly man walks by, calm face, gray beard, carrying a small bag of books. He notices Aarav's drenched condition and pauses. Manan beta. Ye varisto ruk ki par tumhara hausla ruk. Gaya kya? Aarav looks up silently, unsure how to answer. And that's how wisdom enters. Not through doors, but through moments. The man sits beside him, introduces himself, Professor Sen, retired teacher, now teaching life instead of physics. Aarav gives a faint smile. They share tea from a roadside stall. Steam rises between them. In that cup of tea, hope began to warm again. Aarav opens up, talks about his failures, rejections, and broken dreams. Says, Sir, main 100 bar koshish ki. Arba, Ara. Professor Sen listens quietly, then says, Totum, 100 tarik dund lai. Jokam, nahi kart, abiek dundo, jokarta. Chumentos dan. Tehibe advice. They awaken courage. The professor hands Aarav a blank notebook. Isma liho hergalti, hersik, jablik nasik haoche, arnachod doj. Aarav nods, tears forming again. This time of relief. Sometimes you need someone to remind you that failure is just practice for success. Aarav working at the repair shop again, but now with renewed energy, reading books. The professor lends him, writing daily lessons in his new notebook. Meeting the professor every evening at the park bench. He began rebuilding. Not his career, but his mindset. One evening, Aarav shows the professor his first invention sketch. A small solar-powered light for village kids. Professor Sen smiles proudly. Upsopnanai, maksatai. When a mentor believes in you, the world's disbelief doesn't matter anymore. Aarav walking home under streetlights, holding his notebook and sketches close to his chest. He had failed 100 times, but this time he was learning how to rise. Aarav wakes before sunrise, writes notes, studies, works at the shop, repeats. The walls of his small room are now covered with sketches, blueprints, and motivational quotes. Success doesn't come overnight, but it notices those who wake up early every morning. Professor Sen visits Aarav's shop, sees Aarav fixing an old radio and redesigning it to run on solar energy. Smiles. Innovation is born from limitation. Aarav laughs. Sir, Abihar, Kurabe, Ekaidi Lakti. Hi. When you change your mindset, every problem becomes a project. Aarav builds small prototypes from scrap material. Local kids gather around to see them work. He explains the mechanism to them passionately. Knowledge grows when shared. Aarav had begun inspiring others without realizing it. Professor Sen shows him a flyer. National Young Innovator Contest. Apply now. Aarav stares at it in disbelief. Sir, mihais. Odmi wahan. Kais jaga. Professor Sen replies softly. Tumkab kaha thake. Osman surf. Kaha. Opportunity doesn't knock, it whispers through people who believe in you. Aarav fills out the form late at night, practices his presentation in front of a cracked mirror, faces self-doubt, but repeats. Main tayar hun. He wasn't confident yet, but he was consistent, and consistency creates miracles. Aarav boards a crowded train to the contest city, carries his small solar invention wrapped in cloth, looks outside the window, flashes of his mother's memory. Professor smile. Every great journey begins with a single ticket and unshakable faith. Arrival at the contest hall. Huge, modern, intimidating. Young competitors with laptops and polished prototypes. Aarav looks at his simple model, takes a deep breath. Professor Sin's voice echoes in his mind. Talent isn't about tools, it's about truth. For the first time, failure wasn't his fear. It was his fuel. Aarav places his invention on the contest table. Lights flicker on as judges approach. His hands tremble, but his eyes are steady. After 100 failures, this was his one chance, and he was finally ready. A large hall, filled with bright lights. Banners reading National Young Innovator Contest 2025. Aarav stands nervously beside his small solar-powered device. Around him, confident participants, giving polished presentations. His palms sweat, his heart races. He had fought failures, doubts, and hunger, but never a crowd like this. Judge calls out, "Next, Mr. Aarav Singh, Solar Innovation Entry." Aarav takes a deep breath, wipes his hands on his shirt, and walks toward the stage. This was the moment his 100 failures had prepared him for. Aarav places his invention, a small solar lantern, on the table. He starts explaining nervously. Sir? Yeah. Ek low cost. Solar device high. Jogaon kabaksin. Kelai banaya. Gaya. Kaya. Hijink ka. Bijli nahi. His voice trembles, but his passion shines. A judge interrupts. Did you design this alone? Aarav replies softly. Hiparsika. Sabungaltion se jopehal. Sin barakti. The hall goes silent. His invention wasn't extraordinary, but his honesty was. Judges look impressed by his sincerity and practicality. One judge says, "Can we see it work?" Aarav switches it on. The small light glows beautifully, bright and steady. The crowd claps softly. It wasn't just a bulb that lit up. It was his destiny. Cut to Aarav, walking off the stage, shaking hands with the judges. He smiles faintly, eyes teary but calm. For the first time, he didn't need validation. The light within him was enough. Announcement time. The hall fills with tension. The host reads results. Runner-up Aarav Singh for his solar innovation. The crowd cheers. Aarav freezes, shocked. He didn't win first place, but he won something far greater: self-belief. Professor Sen stands in the audience, clapping proudly. Aarav runs to him, hugs him tightly. Professor whispers, "Mainka tan naik. Tintam, tamhara waqt." Maliga Aarav smiles. "Sir, shiad waqt. Nahi, himat. Mil gayi." Voiceover. Sometimes, the universe doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you need to keep going. Aarav holding the trophy. Reporters taking photos. His face filled with gratitude and disbelief. A flashback overlay of all his failures. Sleepless nights and tears, now fading into smiles. This was his 101st attempt. And finally, it worked. It worked. Newspaper headlines spinning across the screen. Local mechanic wins National Innovation Award. From failures to fame, the inspiring journey of Aarav Singh. The world finally saw what he had seen all along, potential and persistence. Aarav walking through the same streets where people once mocked him. Now, they smile and greet him with respect. Small kids run beside him, shouting, Aarav Baya be like Benayenge. Aarav laughs and pats their heads. Once they called him foolish for dreaming, now they called him fearless for achieving. A news reporter interviews him. How does it feel to finally succeed after failing 100 times? Aarav smiles gently. Success, Tobas result high. Ma'am, parasiken kasafarhi. Asli, jithai. True greatness isn't in victory. It's in how humbly you carry it. Aarav returning to his small shop. The place now has a signboard. Aarav Innovations powering villages inside. Young apprentices work under his guidance. Professor Sen watches proudly from the doorway. He built something far greater than a business, a movement. Aarav visits his old school. The principal welcomes him on stage to motivate the students. Aarav holds up his small solar lantern and says, Main engineer nahi tha, par main learner tha, or sikni wale kabhi artenai. The hall erupts in applause. He wasn't just changing lights, he was lighting minds. Aarav's invention being installed in rural homes, children studying under the bright solar lights, villagers thanking him with folded hands. Aarav humbly helping them install more devices. The same hands that once begged for chances now built futures for others. Aarav sits with Professor Sen at sunset on their usual bench. Professor Lagda. Hi mera. Student Mujizeg. Nikal gaya. Aarav smiles. Sir. Egg gaze. Nikal. Apne. Raasta. He dikhaya. They laugh together, watching the sun dip below the horizon. When gratitude replaces ego, destiny bows down in respect. Aarav looking up at the sky, holding his notebook. The same one from the rain-soaked night. The words try again, still faintly visible on the first page. He once failed 100 times, trying to find success. But in the end, success found him. Because he never stopped trying. The legacy of never giving up 10 years later. Peaceful village morning. Children are walking to school, carrying small solar lamps. The signboard reads, Aarav Foundation for Innovation and Learning. The boy who once had no light in his life, now lit thousands of homes. Classrooms glowing with solar-powered lights. Young students learning science using Aarav's simple tools. A teacher explaining. This was invented by Aarav Singh, the man who never gave up. He had become more than a name. He was now a story every child wanted to become. Now, older. Walking through the village training center, he observes young innovators working on projects. One boy approaches nervously. Sir, mera model kam nahi. Kara. Aarav smiles and says, To perfect. Tum sikni waleo, ararne walenai. The cycle of wisdom had begun. The teacher had become the light. Aarav visits Professor Sen's grave, carrying flowers and his original notebook, kneels down and says softly, Sir, Apka student AB. Bilik Raha, Harshin, Sikh Raha. High places the notebook beside the grave. The wind flips it open to the first page. Never give up written boldly. The mentor's wisdom lived on not in books, but in lives. Aarav giving motivational talks in schools and colleges. People clapping, cheering, taking notes. His quote appears on screen. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of it. He turned his pain into purpose, and his story into strength. Aarav sitting under a tree at sunset, the same park bench where he once met Professor Sen. A young girl approaches him with a notebook. Sir, main scientist, Bana Shatihun, Parsab K. Rehi hain. Mushkil hai. Aarav smiles. Firto karna. Sarudo chahi. He hands her a small solar light, and just like that, his journey began again through someone else. Aerial shots of villages glowing at night, people working, studying, dreaming under the solar lights. Aarav's voice echoes. Agar sapna tutche, toh naya sapna banao. Agar rasta rukche, toh naya rasta, dundo paruk namat. Kyunki hair, andera ek roshni, ka intazar karta. Hai Aarav, standing at the edge of a hill, wind blowing through his hair. He closes his eyes, smiles, and looks toward the sunrise. He failed 100 times. But the 101st time, he lit up the world. The story of Aarav Singh, a reminder that persistence always wins. Dedicated to everyone who refuses to give up. Like, share, and inspire someone today.